So I'm going to keep on reading my Bondage and My Freedom. This is Frederick Douglass being faced off with his arch nemesis, Edward motherfucking Covey, the fucking bitch-ass fucking fascist bitch, a fucking piece of shit, fucking fake Christian motherfucker, Dick Lick. There's nothing wrong with Dick Lick, but like, he's a bitch, you know? He's like a fucking lowlife. He's just fucking nothing. He thinks he's the master, but really he's the fucking slave, you know, to his own sadistic oppressive urges, his Nietzschean will to power over others, which is not a love of life, it's a love of death, and you should be very wary of any type of oppressor or authoritarian. Okay, so Mr. Covey is coming after him with his ox. The ox are fucking acting up like they were before. My oxen now behave themselves with singular propriety, opposing their present conduct to my representation of their former antics. I almost wish now that Edward motherfucking Covey, the fucking bitch-ass Covey, was coming, they would do something in keeping with the character I'd given them. But no, they had already had their spree, and they could afford now to be extra good, readily obeying my orders and seeming to understand them quite as well as I did myself. On reaching the woods, my tormentor, who seemed all the way to be remarking upon the good behavior of his oxen, came up to me and ordered me to stop the cart, accompanied the same with the threat that he would now teach me how to break gates and idle away my time, when he sent me out to the woods. So he's coming up with rules to fucking punish him. Suiting the action to the word, Edward fucking Covey paced off in his own wiry fashion to a large black gum tree, the young shoots of which generally used for ox goods, though being exceedingly tough. Three of these goads from 4 to 6 feet long he cut off and trimmed up with his large jackknife. This done, he ordered me to take off my clothes. To this unreasonable order I made no reply, but sternly refused to take off my clothing. If you're going to beat me, thought I, you shall do it. Do so over my clothes. After many threats which made no impression on me, he rushed at me with something of the savage fierceness of a wolf, tore off the few and thinly worn clothes I had on, and proceeded to wear me out on my back the heavy goads which he had cut from the gum tree. This flogging was the first of a series of floggings, and though very severe, it was less so than many which came after it, and these for offences far lighter than the gate breaking. I remained with Mr. Covey 1 year. I cannot say I lived with him, and during the first 6 months that I was there, I was whipped either with sticks or cowskins every week. Aching bones and a sore back were my constant companions. Frequent as the lash was used, Mr. Covey thought less of it as a means of breaking down my spirit than that of hard and long continued labor. He worked me steadily up to the point of my powers of endurance. From the dawn of day in the morning till the darkness was complete in the evening, I was kept the hard work in the field or in the woods. At certain seasons of the year, we were all kept in the field till 11 and 12 o'clock at night. At these times, Edward fucking Covey would attend us in the field and urge us on with words or blows as it seemed best to him. He had in his life been an overseer, and he well understood the business of slave driving. There is no deceiving him. He knew just what a man or boy could do, and he held both a strict account. When he pleased, he would work himself like a very Turk, making everything fly before him. It was, however, scarcely necessary for Mr. Edward fucking Covey to be really present in the field to have his work go on industriously. He had the faculty of making us feel that he was always present, so psychological fucking terror. By a series of adroitly managed surprises which he practiced, I was prepared to expect him at any moment. His plan was never to approach the spot where his hands were at work in an open, manly, and direct manner. No thief was ever more artful in his devices than this man Covey. He would creep and crawl in ditches and gullies, hide behind stumps and bushes, and practice so much of the cunning of the serpent that Bill Smith and I, between ourselves, never called him by any other name than the snake. We fancied that in his eyes and his gait we could see a snakish resemblance. One half of his proficiency in the art of Negro breaking consisted, I should think, in this species of cunning. We were never secure. He could see or hear us nearly all the time. He was to us behind every stump, tree, bush, and fence on the plantation. He carried this kind of trickery so far that he would sometimes mount his horse and make believe he was going to St. Michael's, and in 30 minutes afterwards, you might find his horse tied in the woods and the snake like Edward fucking Covey lying flat in the ditch with his head lifted above the edge or in a fence corner. Watching every movement of the slaves, I've known him to walk up to us and give us special orders as to our work in advance, as if he were leaving home with a view to be absent several days, and before he got halfway to the house, he would avail himself of our inattention to his movements to turn short on his heels, conceal himself behind a fence corner or a tree, and watch us until the going down of the sun. Mean and contemptible as is all this, it is in keeping with the character which the life of a slaveholder is calculated to produce. There's no earthly inducement in the slave's condition to incite him to labor faithfully. The fear of punishment is the sole motive for any sort of industry with him. Knowing this fact as the slaveholder does, and judging the slave by himself, he naturally concludes the slave will be idle whenever the cause for this fear is absent. However, or hence all sorts of petty deceptions are practiced to inspire this fear. But with Mr. Covey, Edward fucking Covey, trickery was natural. Everything in the shape of learning or religion which he possessed was made to conform to this semi-lying propensity. He did not seem conscious that the practice had anything unmanly, base, or contemptible about it. It was a part of an important system with him, essential to the relation of master and slave. I thought I saw in his very religious devotions this controlling element of his character. A long prayer at night made up for the short prayer in the morning, and few men could seem more devotional than he when he had nothing else to do. Mr. Edward fucking Covey was not content with the cold style of family worship adopted in these cold latitudes, which begin and end with a simple prayer. 7 minutes. I got, 8 more minutes left? So 1:48. Okay. No, the voice of praise as well as of prayer must be heard in his house night and morning. At first I was called upon to bear some part in these exercises, but the repeated flogging given me by Edward fucking Covey turned the whole thing into mockery. He was a poor singer, and mainly relied on me for raising the hymn for the family, and when I failed to do so, he was thrown into much confusion. I do not think that he ever abused me on account of these vexations. His religion was a thing altogether apart from his worldly concerns. He knew nothing of it as a holy principle, directing and controlling his daily life, making the latter conform to the requirements of the gospel. One or two facts will illustrate his character better than a volume of generalities. I have already said or implied that Mr. Edward fucking Covey was a poor man. He was in fact just commencing to lay the foundation of his fortune, as fortune is regarded in a slave state. The first condition of wealth and respectability there being the ownership of human property. Every nerve is strained by the poor man to obtain it, and very little regard is had to the manner of obtaining it. In pursuit of this object, pious as Mr. Edward fucking Covey was, he proved himself to be as unscrupulous and base as the worst of his neighbors. In the beginning he was only able, as he said, to buy one slave, and scandalous and shocking as is the fact, he boasted that he bought her simply as a breeder. But the worst is not told in this naked statement. This young woman, Caroline was her name, was virtually compelled by Mr. Edward fucking Covey to abandon herself to the object for which he had purchased her, and the result was the birth of twins at the end of the year. At this addition to his human stock, both Edward fucking Covey and his wife Susan were ecstatic with joy. No one dreamed of reproaching the woman or finding fault with the hired man, Bill Smith, the father of the children, for Mr. Edward fucking Covey himself had locked the two up together every night, thus inviting the result. So he put his slaves together and made them breed some new children, so that way they would have more slaves on his property. He forced basically Bill Smith to rape Carolyn. Bill Smith raped Carolyn, right? Because Mr. Edward fucking Covey forced that to happen. But I will pursue this revolting subject no further. No better illustration of the unchaste and demoralizing character of slavery can be found than is furnished in the fact that this professedly Christian slaveholder missed all his prayers and hymns, was shamelessly and boastfully encouraging and actually compelling in his own house undisguised and unmitigated fornication as a means of increasing his human stock. I may remark here that while this fact will be read with disgust and shame at the North, it will be laughed at as smart and praiseworthy in Mr. Edward fucking Covey in the South. For a man is no more condemned there for buying a woman and devoting her to this life of dishonor than for buying a cow and raising stock from her. The same rules are observed with a view to increasing the number and the quality of the former as of the latter. So he was fucking everybody, right? I will here reproduce what I said of my own experience in this wretched place more than 10 years ago. If at any one time in my life more than another I was made to drink the bitterest dregs of slavery, that time was during the first 6 months of my stay with Mr. Edward fucking Covey. We were worked all weathers. It was never too hot or too cold. It would never rain, blow, snow, or hail too hard for us to work in the field. Work was scarcely more than the order of the day than the night. The longest days were too short for him, and the shortest nights were too long for him. I was somewhat unmanageable when I first went there, but a few months of his discipline tamed me. Mr. Covey succeeded in breaking me. I was broken in body, soul, and spirit. My natural elasticity was crushed. My intellect languished. The disposition to read departed. The cheerful spark that lingered about my eye died. The dark night of slavery closed in upon me, and behold, a man transformed into a brute. That's a good-ass passage. I'm going to just repeat it. If at any one time in my life more than another I was to drink the bitterest dregs of slavery, that time was during the first 6 months of my stay with Mr. Edward fucking Covey. The fucking rapist. The fucking piece of shit. Fucking just low-life barbarian. We are worked all weathers. It was never too hot or too cold. It could never rain, blow, snow, or hail too hard for us to work in the field. Work was scarcely more the order of the day than the night. The longest days were too short for him, and the shortest nights were too long for him. This motherfucker was getting off on this sadistic fucking control. I was somewhat unmanageable when I first went there, but a few months of his discipline tamed me. Mr. Edward fucking Covey, succeeded in breaking me. It's like I had broke the ox. I was broken in body, soul, spirit. My natural elasticity was crushed. My intellect languished. The disposition to read departed. The cheerful spark that lingered about my eye died. The dark night of slavery closed in upon me. And behold, man transformed into a brute. Sunday was my only leisure day. I spent this in a sort of beast-like stupor between sleep and awake under some large tree. At times I would rise up, a flash of energetic freedom would dart through my soul, accompanied with a faint beam of hope, flickered for a moment, then vanished. I sank down, mourning over my wretched condition. I was sometimes prompted to take my life and that of Edward fucking Covey, but was prevented by a combination of hope and fear. My sufferings on this plantation seemed now like a dream rather than a stern reality. Our house stood within a few rods of the Chesapeake Bay, whose broad bosom was ever white, with sails from every quarter of the habitable globe. Those beautiful vessels, robed in purest white, so delightful to the eye of free men, were to me so many shrouded ghosts to terrify and torment me with thoughts of my wretched condition. I have often, in the deep stillness of a summer's Sabbath, stood all alone upon the banks of that noble bay, and traced with saddened heart and tearful eye the countless number of sails moving off to the mighty ocean. The sight of these always affected me powerfully. My thoughts would compel utterance, and there, with no audience but the Almighty, I would pour out my soul's complaint in my rude way, with an apostrophe to the moving multitude of ships. You are loosed from your moorings and free. I am fast in my chains and a slave. You move merrily before the gentle gale, and I sadly before the bloody whip. Your freedom's swift-winged angels that fly around the world. I am confined in bands of iron. Oh, that I were free. Oh, that I were on one of your gallant decks and under your protecting wing. Alas, betwixt me and you the turbid waters roll. Go on, oh, that I could also go on. Could I but swim. If I could fly, oh, why was I born a man of whom to make a brute? The glad ship is gone, she hides in the dim distance. I am left in the hottest hells of ending slavery. Oh God, save me. God, deliver me. Let me be free. Is there any God? Why am I a slave? I'll run away. I will not stand it. Get caught or get clear, I'll try it. I had as well die with ague as with fever. I only have one life to lose. I had as well be killed running as die standing. Only think of it. 100 miles straight north and I'm free. Try it. Yes. God helping me? I will.